I turned 40 in complete silence. No birthday message, no phone calls, not even a, hey, almost forgot, happy birthday, in the family group chat. My phone stayed cold and lifeless on the table, screen black, like it too didn't want to acknowledge the day. It was just past 10 a.m., and the only sound in the apartment was the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional rustle from my cat, Jupiter, knocking something off the counter like he always did when the silence got too thick. I had bought myself a slice of cheesecake from the corner market the night before. Half out of tradition, half out of reluctant hope. I placed it on a chipped ceramic plate, lit a candle I found buried in a drawer, and let it burn down beside the cake without even making a wish. I didn't have one. Not this year. I sat there in my robe, staring at the slice. The fork I held hovered above it for too long. I finally took a bite. It was sweet, but somehow bitter, cold. The crust crumbled like it knew this wasn't a celebration. Jupiter hopped onto the chair opposite me and meowed softly, as if to say, at least I remembered. I smiled and scratched behind his ear. He blinked slowly, knowingly. After a few bites, I opened Instagram. Maybe someone posted something. Maybe I had missed it. My sister was posting stories from a family brunch. Mimosas, smiling kids, balloons in the background. Not for me, of course. My parents? They had checked in at the golf course. Dad wore his tacky sun visor. Mom had her oversized sunglasses on. There were drinks, laughs, hashtags. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't mentioned. Not even a thinking of someone today. Again. This wasn't the first time. The past 3 years had been slipped minds, scheduling mishaps. Oh, I thought it was next week. But this year, they didn't even bother with excuses. Just like that, 40 arrived, and no one noticed. Except Jupiter. And me. And this forgotten slice of cake on a table that felt colder than usual. I closed my phone, slid the empty cake box into the trash, and whispered to myself, next year. You won't forget either. It was almost 2 p.m. when my phone finally rang. The screen lit up with one word. Mom. For a moment, just a brief, breath-held second, my chest fluttered. Maybe they'd remembered after all. Maybe she was calling with guilt in her voice, trying to cover her forgetfulness with something sweet and small. Maybe there'd be a pause, a laugh, how could we forget? Maybe she'd even ask how I was doing. I swiped to answer, trying to mask the hopeful tremble in my voice. Hi, Mom. Oh, good. You picked up, she said quickly. Listen, we need your help with something. No, happy birthday. No, how are you? Just the sound of wind on her end and her voice slicing through it. So, about your father's retirement party, she continued, her tone businesslike, casual, like we were co-workers, not blood. We need someone to write the speech. You know, something sweet but not cheesy. You've always been so good with words. I sat still in my chair, the phone pressed to my ear like it weighed 10 pounds. Jupiter rubbed against my leg. I didn't move. That was it. That was the call. No acknowledgement, no second thought. Sure, I heard myself say. My voice didn't shake. It didn't crack. It didn't even flinch. Because that's what I always do. I show up. I help. I write the speeches, design the invitations, send the reminder emails. I fix the chaos without being seen in the photos. I'm the voice behind their proud moments, the glue in their family album that no one flips to. Mom went on talking about venue ideas, table linens, and whether or not Dad should wear the blue tie or the burgundy one. I gave her suggestions, nodded into the silence. She didn't notice my pauses. She didn't ask what I was doing today. She didn't hear the soft sound of Jupiter jumping into my lap. Before she hung up, she laughed. You're a lifesaver, really. I don't know what we'd do without you. I smiled faintly and said, no problem. And just like that, the line went dead. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then went black. I whispered, "It's my birthday," to no one but myself. Jupiter blinked at me slowly, like he already knew. 3 days later, I was cleaning the kitchen drawer we all have, the one filled with rubber bands, expired coupons, takeout menus, and charger cables for devices no one owns anymore. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just moving, rearranging, trying not to feel like a forgotten birthday candle, burned out and bent. That's when I saw it, wedged beneath an old receipt in a paperclip shaped like a heart, a birthday card. Dusty, yellowed at the edges. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Cynthia, my coworker. The only person at work who ever bothered to ask about my weekend plans or remembered that I didn't drink cream in my coffee. I opened it slowly. Glitter fell out like it was embarrassed to be late. Inside, "Here's to better luck next year. Happy early birthday, superstar." And tucked inside the crease, one of those cheap scratch-off lottery tickets. A joke, obviously. A $5 gag from the corner gas station. But I smiled anyway. I grabbed a coin from the same drawer and scratched. First number, matched. Second, also matched. My heart quickened. Third, fourth, fifth, all matched. And then, the bonus number. Silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels full, like time itself just held its breath. I blinked. $1 million. Not a joke, not a prank, not a dream. I checked again, triple-checked. Opened the state lottery app, scanned the barcode. The screen lit up. Claim at lottery office, high-value prize. I stared at the ticket, then at my empty inbox. At my muted group chats. At the photo my sister had posted earlier that morning of their Sunday brunch. Hashtag, #family. First location, some trendy rooftop. No mention of me. No mention ever. I held the ticket in my hand like it was made of glass. Like if I breathed too hard, it might blow away. And then, the thought slipped into my mind so quietly I almost missed it. They forgot me for years. So maybe, just maybe, I'd forget to tell them. That night I couldn't sleep. There was a heaviness in my chest. Not sadness exactly, more like confirmation. Like finally finding the missing piece of a puzzle, only to realize it proved what you were afraid to admit. I drove to my parents' house the next morning. I had the spare key. They were out. Brunch, probably, or one of their many golf days. I walked straight to the old wooden cabinet in the hallway, the one my mother always guarded like a museum curator. Inside, decades of photo albums, carefully labeled, color-coded, family history organized in chronological worship. I sat on the floor and opened the first one. Page after page. Birthday cakes, party hats, gift-wrapped memories. Not mine. There was Emma's 3rd birthday, 7 photos, custom cake, pony ride, Dad's 50th, balloons, full banquet, 32 smiling guests. Even the dog had a 2-page spread with captions. And me? When I finally found my face, it was always an accident. In the corner, cropped, blurred, sometimes behind someone taller, sometimes behind the camera entirely. I wasn't hidden maliciously. I was simply forgotten. No one said, "Let's get one with her in it." No one noticed I wasn't tagged or centered or celebrated. It wasn't even neglect. It was something colder than that. Invisibility. I flipped through more pages. There were only 2 pictures of my own birthdays in 20 years. One, when I was maybe 5, holding a plastic plate with a single cupcake, my eyes not even looking at the lens. The other, at 18, blurry, mid-blink, cropped awkwardly at the shoulder. Everyone else was in focus. I closed the album slowly. The evidence was there. Tactile. Documented. I had always been present. I had just never been seen. The next morning, I woke up early. Not because of excitement, not even because of nerves. Because I had made a decision. Quietly, the same way I had learned to feel everything else in life. Alone. I wore a plain blouse, pulled my hair back, left my phone on silent. The lottery office was sterile and anticlimactic. Paperwork, ID checks, fingerprints, a beige waiting room with flickering fluorescent lights. Then came the real meeting. The financial advisor they paired me with wore a sharp suit and a sharper smile. He shook my hand like he thought I might break. He looked at me the way people do when they expect you to cry or scream or tremble. I did none of that. He slid a folder across the table, thick with information about trust accounts, tax shelters, investment options, and privacy strategies. Now, he said gently, you don't have to tell anyone yet. In fact, plenty of people wait. Some even change their names, move cities, start over. I stared at the forms in front of me. His voice was muffled, like I was underwater, like I had already left the room. Then I smiled. I have no one to tell. He blinked, adjusted his tie, looked down at his notes. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. For me, I was used to silences that echoed. I picked up the pen and signed. I opened the account. I answered the security questions, selected the card design, requested digital access. It was done in less than 20 minutes. No confetti, no camera flash, no glass of champagne or wide-eyed relatives hugging me with fake warmth. No, we're so proud of you. Just a click, a signature, a silent transformation. Quietly, invisibly, I became a millionaire. And no one, not a single soul, knew. It was the loudest moment of my life. The hall was full. Round tables dressed in white linen, clinking glasses, polished shoes, laughter that didn't quite reach me. It was my father's retirement party, a grand send-off for a man who had built his life around discipline, hard work, and predictable rituals. The room was filled with coworkers, old neighbors, distant cousins, and of course, my family. I stood near the podium, holding the printed speech I'd written just the night before. They had asked me, of course. I was always the one who had a way with words. The reliable daughter. The one who stayed late to help. The one who wrote their emotions better than they could feel them. The host tapped the mic and called my name. Polite applause. I stepped forward, smiled just enough, and began to read. It was a good speech, warm, nostalgic, funny in the right places. People laughed. Some wiped their eyes. My father beamed. My mother nodded. Strangers approached me afterward to say how lovely it was. I stood under the warm light of approval, but felt nothing. Not joy, not bitterness, just observation, as if I were watching myself from across the room. When I stepped off the stage, my father pulled me into a firm hug. That was beautiful, he said. Thank you, sweetheart. I nodded. My mother leaned in, placed a hand on my arm, and whispered with a proud little smile, "You always make us proud." Her perfume was the same as always, too floral, too strong. I looked at her, really looked. She had just heard me list every milestone in my father's life. She had just heard a room full of people applaud the words I'd written. And still, she had never said, "Happy birthday." Not last week, not now, not ever. Not even a "sorry we forgot." Just another performance, another applause, another act in the long-running play called The Perfect Daughter. I smiled politely and said nothing, because by now, silence was fluent. Later that evening, after the speeches were done and the cake was served, the family circled around the bar like planets orbiting a sun they all believed they belonged to. They laughed too loud, clinked too often. The wine flowed like water, vintage bottles uncorked without hesitation, poured into tall, delicate glasses held by people who had never tasted the weight of a budget. Someone ordered another round of champagne. I stood just outside their orbit, sipping ginger ale from a plastic flute. My brother made a toast, his third one that night, each more slurred and exaggerated than the last. They adored him, called him the charmer, the golden boy. the one who always shows up. He didn't write the speech. He didn't help set up. He didn't even show up on time. But they looked at him like he was the reason the stars stayed in the sky. I slipped away, unnoticed, into the side hallway where the caterer was packing up dessert trays. I tapped his shoulder gently and handed him a sealed envelope. "For the event," I said. He flipped it open, skimmed the amount, and raised an eyebrow. This covers everything. Are you sure?" I nodded. "It's anonymous," I added. He hesitated. "Your brother said—" "I know," I interrupted softly, smiling. I placed the envelope into the event folder, tucked it beneath the invoice, and walked away before he could say anything else. Back in the main hall, my mother was laughing at one of my brother's jokes. My father was hugging an old coworker. Glasses clinked again. More photos, more smiles, more illusion. I returned to my place by the wall, invisible again, just like I had been for decades. Later I overheard someone say, "He's so generous, that boy. Paid for everything without blinking." I smiled and said nothing. Let them believe it. Let them toast the wrong hero. The truth was mine now, quiet, solid, and debt-free. Weeks passed. Life settled into its usual rhythms, the kind where people move quickly through days filled with errands, emails, and self-importance, never stopping long enough to remember the quiet spaces between their own voices. One afternoon, as I was steeping tea in my small, sunlit kitchen, my phone buzzed. Family group chat, a rarity, a collective ping. I stared at the notification for a second before opening it. Marla. "Should we plan something for Mom and Dad's anniversary?" 40 years feels big, right? Almost instantly, the responses began to roll in. Ben. "Yeah, we could do something at the vineyard again. They loved it there." Uncle Greg. "Count me in. Just give me the date." Emma. "I can make a video collage or something. You know, like last time." I watched the messages pile up, each one full of enthusiasm. Memories, logistics, ideas. No one paused. No one scrolled up. No one remembered. My birthday had been 3 weeks ago. 40th. Not a small one. Not insignificant. But forgotten. Again. No one had followed up. No one had backtracked. "No. Sorry, I just realized." They moved forward like it hadn't happened. Because to them, it hadn't. I took a long sip of tea. The steam fogged my glasses slightly. Jupiter purred at my feet. Then I typed slowly. "Me. Of course. I'll write something beautiful, like always." A heart emoji popped up under my message. A thumbs up. More thanks. Another plan forming. And just like that, I was folded back into the machine. The reliable one. The ghost in the gears. The voice that made them look better without being seen. No one questioned it. No one paused. No one remembered. And I didn't remind them. Not because I was hurt, but because I had something they didn't. I remembered everything. I signed the lease on a Tuesday. It was quiet. No celebration. No champagne toast. No smiling agent handing over a novelty-sized key with a bow on it. Just a plain silver key on a plain silver ring, and a contract with my name written clearly across the top. For the first time, my name wasn't buried behind anyone else's. The apartment sat near the water, far enough from the city to feel like escape, close enough that I could disappear without anyone noticing I was gone. A modest building with ivy curling along the brick, floor-to-ceiling windows, a balcony that caught the afternoon sun just right. I paid 6 months in advance. Cash, no financing, no questions. The landlord raised an eyebrow. "Starting over?" he asked. I smiled. "Something like that." I didn't tell anyone. No housewarming texts, no photos sent to group chats, no status update, no story post, not even a whisper to coworkers or neighbors. It was mine, like the lottery ticket, like the truth. I brought in the essentials myself. Books, candles, soft blankets, my writing notebooks, a kettle, A wind chime for the balcony. No family photos. No inherited dishes. No reminders of what I had once tried to belong to. Just space. Just breathe. Just silence. The good kind. Jupiter took to it instantly. He perched on the windowsill for hours, watching the light shift across the water, his tail flicking gently as boats passed by. Sometimes I'd sit beside him, legs tucked up, mug warm in my hands, and say nothing at all. Here, I didn't have to explain myself, didn't have to smile for other people's comfort, didn't have to apologize for being too quiet, too distant, too forgotten. In this place, I was not a background figure, not the afterthought. In this place, I was the subject. It arrived on a Wednesday, slipped through the mail slot in an envelope too heavy to be casual. Gold embossed, cream-colored, edges beveled. The kind of envelope people save for weddings or political fundraisers. It even smelled like something expensive, aged paper and perfume. My parents' names were printed across the top in curling script. Celebrating 50 golden years, Margaret and Charles. 50 years. A milestone. A monument. A legacy of golf outings, dinner parties, polite applause, and perfectly arranged smiles. They were already legends in their own social circles. This was just the formal crowning. I opened it slowly, not out of anticipation, but out of a kind of slow-burning curiosity. Like peering into a time capsule you know won't include you. Inside, the invitation card. Thick, ornate, black tie, catered dinner, live music, open bar. Venue, somewhere designed to impress. And then, tucked inside like a side note, a personal card. Handwritten, my mother's careful cursive. Gabrielle, your words are always the heart of our family. We would love for you to give the keynote speech. No, thank you. No, we appreciate what you did for Dad's party. And definitely, no happy birthday for the milestone I'd just crossed in silence. Just another assignment. Another way to decorate their night. Another performance. I sat down with the card in my lap, the paper almost too stiff to bend. Jupiter circled my feet, brushing against my ankle like he could feel my temperature rising. I stared at the handwriting. The heart of our family. I wondered when exactly a heart had stopped being something that beat and started being something that was used. I folded the invitation, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it on the kitchen counter. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't respond either. Not yet. Paisley stopped by unannounced, like she sometimes did when her instincts kicked in. She carried a paper bag of fresh croissants from the cafe down the street, her hair still damp from the rain. Jupiter greeted her at the door like always. No suspicion, just comfort. I was in the kitchen, mug in hand, the anniversary invitation still sitting on the counter like a challenge I hadn't yet accepted or refused. She saw it before I could move it. Her eyes scanned the envelope, the shimmer of the gold foil catching the late afternoon light. She picked it up, opened it slowly, read the contents without asking if she should. When she reached the last line, "Your words are always the heart of our family," she set it down carefully, then looked at me. "Did they even call you?" she asked quietly. I knew what she meant. Not, did they invite you? Not, did they ask nicely? But the real question, did they remember your birthday? I shook my head once. No anger, no surprise. Her face changed, just slightly, but enough. Her mouth tightened. Her eyes darkened the way they did when she was 10 and saw someone get bullied at school. That quiet rage that never screamed, but always struck. They don't deserve your words, she said, her voice firm, sure. I looked at her then, really looked. This woman I had raised. This young soul who had somehow learned empathy in a house where it was never taught. She had remembered my birthday with a handwritten letter, a cup of my favorite tea, and a whispered, "I see you." She didn't forget. And that made all the difference. I smiled faintly, then turned back to the invitation. Maybe, I said, running a finger along the edge of the card. They deserve a different kind of story. Paisley tilted her head. What do you mean? I didn't answer. Not yet. But in my mind, something was already forming. Not a speech. A reckoning. The night of the celebration, I dressed the part. A sleek black dress. Clean lines. Low heels. Hair pinned up the way my mother used to insist on for formal occasions. I wore the necklace Paisley gave me for my birthday. The one no one else knew about. I looked like I belonged. From the outside, I was just another honored guest. A daughter come to honor her parents. A woman ready to take the stage and deliver yet another perfectly composed tribute to other people's lives. I drove to the venue in silence. No music. No GPS. I knew the place by heart. It was the same vineyard they had used for Dad's retirement, the same white stone walls and trimmed hedges, the same valet boys in crisp uniforms who smiled too politely. Inside, everything sparkled. Champagne towers, golden table runners, laughter bouncing off the walls like confetti. I walked straight to the gift table. There, between a monogrammed wine crate and a velvet-wrapped photo album, I placed a single white envelope. Sealed, unlabeled, no ribbon, no flourish, just weight. Inside it, the speech they'd asked me to write, but not the one they were expecting. No praise, no nostalgia, no pillar of the family anecdotes. It was a quiet eulogy for the version of me they never bothered to know. It was the story they refused to see. I stepped back, adjusted the envelope to sit just right. And then, I turned around. No spotlight, no microphone, no applause. I walked out the same door I had entered, the hum of conversation dimming behind me like a radio being gently turned down. Outside, I called a cab. Where to? The driver asked. I gave him the address of the beach apartment. That night, I curled up on the wooden floor in front of the windows, Jupiter in my lap, a bowl of warm lemon pasta beside me. No speeches, no eyes watching, no one asking for my voice and forgetting my name. Just the sound of waves tapping against the shore and the soft rhythm of my own breath. For the first time in years, I wasn't performing. I was living. It sat quietly on the gift table, blending in among boxes wrapped in metallic foil and bows tied by department store clerks. No one noticed it at first. It didn't sparkle. It didn't announce itself. But eventually, someone picked it up. My mother, most likely. She always managed the presentation table with a practiced hand, cataloging gifts, arranging them by shape and shine, making sure nothing looked out of place. I imagined her opening the envelope at home that night, glass of wine in hand, already tired from too much applause and attention. Inside, a card. No glitter, no monogram, just a cream rectangle, hand-folded, tucked with care. On it, written in my cleanest handwriting, "Congratulations. I hope you find joy in being celebrated, as much as I found in being forgotten. Gabrielle." Short, still, surgical. But that wasn't all. Tucked carefully behind the card, barely visible until the card was lifted, a photocopy of a check. $1 million. My name printed at the top, the signature at the bottom, the kind of document you don't flaunt, but can't ignore. It wasn't arrogance, it was clarity, a receipt of existence, the proof they never asked for, but now couldn't unsee. No speech, no confrontation, just paper, truth, and silence, my native language. They would stare at that check and realize I hadn't asked for anything. I hadn't demanded recognition. I hadn't even told them what they missed. I had simply lived, outside their line of sight. And now, they would be the ones haunted by the outline of a daughter they never really saw. The silence didn't last long. By noon the next day, my phone lit up like a switchboard in a burning building. Marla. Is this real? No greeting, no punctuation, just panic disguised as curiosity. Trey. Why didn't you tell us? Not, I'm proud of you. Not, This is amazing. Just confusion laced with offense. My mother. Call me. This is serious. 3 dots followed her message. Then they vanished. Then returned. She was typing, deleting, retyping, trying to find a version of her voice that wouldn't sound like guilt. My father. You embarrassed your family. That one made me pause. Not, we're surprised. Not, we had no idea. Not even, congratulations. Just shame, disappointment, control slipping through his fingers like dry sand. They didn't mention the speech. They didn't talk about the card. No one asked about the meaning behind the message. No one asked about the silence that led to it. The years, the forgetting, the invisibility, and not a single person, not one, asked if I was happy. Not, how long have you known? Not, what will you do next? Not even, do you need anything? Because that was never the point, was it? It was never about how I felt. It was about the image I had fractured. The story I had rewritten without their permission. Their disappointment wasn't rooted in my wealth. It was rooted in the fact that I hadn't asked for their approval to have it. I turned the phone face down on the kitchen table. Jupiter blinked up at me from his sun-drenched spot by the window. I smiled. Let them sit in their chaos. Let them trip over the version of me they never cared to understand. I had already moved on. The group chat had gone quiet for hours. After the initial wave of disbelief, disappointment, and defensive outrage, the silence felt sterile. Like the hush after a public slap, no one sure who should speak first or how. Then, just as I was settling in with a cup of tea, my phone buzzed again. Paisley. Her name lit up the screen with quiet fire. I opened the message. No build-up, no diplomacy. Just this. My mom's been your doormat for 30 years. This is the first time she made noise. Maybe listen instead of scolding. 3 sentences. No emojis, no apologies, no permission asked, just truth. I stared at the screen, the words vibrating with a clarity no one else in the family had dared to voice. It wasn't the kind of thing you said in our family. Not publicly, not in writing, not without consequences. But Paisley had said it anyway, for me. I didn't cry, but something inside me unknotted. Something that had been tangled up for decades finally gave way, like thread slipping loose from an old stitch. A few seconds passed. Then, Vanessa, my cousin, the one who always stayed neutral, always played nice. Honestly, good for her. I blinked. It wasn't a grand statement, it wasn't a manifesto, but it was something, the kind of something that cracks silence open, seen, recognized, affirmed. No one else replied. Not right away. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Maybe they were too stunned by Paisley's audacity. Maybe they were waiting to see who'd throw the next stone. But I wasn't waiting anymore. The version of me they had grown comfortable ignoring had already left the building. And now, my daughter stood in the doorway behind me. It was late afternoon when Marla showed up. Unannounced, like a storm cloud rolling in with a smile painted on. She didn't knock, just rang the bell twice, fast. A sound I knew well. The rhythm of control wrapped in good intentions. I opened the door slowly. Jupiter brushed past my leg but didn't run to greet her. He sensed it too. Marla stood there holding a bottle of wine in one hand and a tight-lipped smile in the other. "Can we talk?" she asked, already stepping inside. I didn't offer coffee, or tea, or the soft chair. I let her speak standing. She set the wine on the counter like a peace offering, though it trembled slightly in her hand. "I've been thinking," she began, "about everything. The party, the check, the group chat." She paused, looked around the apartment, and frowned at the clean quietness of it all. At the peace that didn't include her. Then came the sentence she'd built her whole visit around. "You're acting like a child." The words floated in the air for a second before landing. Softly, harmlessly, like a bird hitting a window that had already been closed. I took a deep breath. Calm. Measured. "No," I said, meeting her eyes without flinching. "I'm just finally acting like someone who knows her worth." She blinked. There was no script for this version of me. She shifted her weight, scoffed a little, and turned toward the door. No hug. No, "Let's talk again soon." She grabbed her keys but left the wine on the counter. I didn't stop her. She left in a huff, heels clacking, silence trailing behind her like perfume that had long since gone sour. I stood there for a moment after the door clicked shut. Jupiter jumped up on the counter, sniffed the wine bottle, then turned away, unimpressed. "Me too," I whispered. It arrived quietly, like most important things do. No fanfare, no text warning me to check the mail. Just an envelope slipped through the slot one morning, addressed in my father's familiar handwriting. Sharp, narrow, and slightly tilted, as if even his letters stood at attention. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. My fingers hesitated at the seal, not out of fear, but out of old muscle memory. I had learned early on that letters from my father, though rare, often carried more weight than they showed. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Folded neatly. No flourish. No signature in gold ink. Just his words, steady and direct. "Gabrielle, I read your note again. The first time I was angry. The second time, I was confused. But the third time I saw something else. I saw you." My breath caught. "I'm sorry we made you invisible. I don't know how we did it for so long. Maybe we were looking too far forward or too far inward. I don't know if we can fix it. But I hope, sincerely, I hope someday we see you clearly, if you're still willing to be seen." No love, Dad. No ask for forgiveness. Just truth, offered plainly, like an open hand with no demand in return. I read it again, then again. Tears came. Not all at once, but slow, steady, like they were arriving from years ago. 5 minutes, maybe less. But it was enough. Not enough to erase, but enough to soften. I folded the letter back up, placed it in the drawer beside the tea bags and matches. I didn't frame it. I didn't text him back. I just went back to my life, to the silence I had chosen, to the space I had built, to the peace that no longer needed their permission. And somehow, that letter didn't pull me back in. It simply met me where I was, and let me stay there. 3 months later, on a drizzly Thursday evening, I stood in front of a microphone in the back corner of a small independent bookstore tucked between a coffee shop and a laundromat. My memoir had been out for just over a week. Self-published, quiet release, no fanfare, no interviews. But word had spread. The folding chairs were full. Some people stood along the bookshelves, holding mugs of tea, their jackets still damp from the rain. The smell of espresso mingled with paper and old wood. Warmth hummed through the room like a low note on a cello. I took a breath and opened the first page. My voice didn't shake. Not this time. The story was mine, and for once, I wasn't borrowing space in someone else's spotlight. People listened. Some nodded, a few smiled, others wiped their eyes. When I finished the first excerpt, the room was still for a moment, suspended in that rare silence where people don't quite know how to return to real life. Then the clapping started. Not thunderous, not forced, but honest. And then, the line formed. People I didn't know waited with copies of my book in hand. They thanked me, told me how it felt like I'd written something out of their own lives. One woman whispered, "You gave words to things I've never been able to say." And then, I saw her. In the back row, half shadowed by a bookshelf. My mother. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't crying, she wasn't even making herself known. She just sat, alone, still, present, her coat still damp, her purse in her lap like she might need to leave at any moment. I kept reading. I didn't break, didn't pause, didn't rush. But I saw her, and then she slipped out the side door. Before the final page, before the signing, before the line ended, but she had come. Not for the spotlight, not for the photo, not to take credit. She came. And that was something. Not everything, but something. On the morning of my 41st birthday, the sky was soft and gray, the kind of quiet light that makes everything feel like it's waiting. I wasn't expecting anything. I had made peace with that long ago. So when the delivery driver buzzed my door, I assumed it was a mistake. A neighbor's package, a wrong address, something ordinary. But the label had my name on it. In handwriting I recognized. It was from Marla. I opened it slowly, carefully. Inside, a wall calendar. Thick cardstock, spiral-bound. A different family photo for each month. Some familiar, some new. My cousin's wedding on June. The dog in December. My father in Jupiter, oddly enough, on October. And written in, by hand, not printed, were every family member's birthdays. Every anniversary, every holiday. Color-coded, underlined, carefully marked. And then I flipped to April. The 14th. Gabrielle, 41. Written in gold pen. Not black, not blue, gold. I stared at it for a long moment. Not because it made everything better. Not because it erased the silence of the years that came before. But because someone, somewhere, had decided. This time, I would be remembered. No grand apology, no dramatic speech. Just a quiet square, outlined in gold. Recognition, folded into the ordinary. Ink, where absence used to be. I hung it on the wall by my desk. Not for function, for proof. That once they had forgotten me. But now, they had to remember. They still forget sometimes. Birthdays pass with a late message, a missed call, a comment added to a post instead of a phone call. I'm not surprised anymore. Habits like forgetting aren't easily unlearned when they've been passed down like family recipes. But it doesn't sting the way it used to. Not because I've grown numb, but because I've grown full. There was a time I would have bent myself into impossible shapes to be remembered, to be useful, to be seen. Now? I don't write speeches for other people anymore. Not for retirement parties, not for anniversaries, not for the people who clapped loudest but listened the least. Now I write for myself. Pages filled with the stories I was once told were too quiet to matter. Essays that carry my breath instead of my compliance. Memoirs shaped like rebellion wrapped in grace. And the audience? They're listening. Not because I asked them to, because they chose to. Strangers line up after readings with shaking hands and eyes full of memory. Young women tell me they see themselves in my silence. Men pause before speaking, as if trying to feel the space between my sentences. People bring books with sticky notes, dog-eared pages, underlined truths. The girl they once cropped out of photos? She's on the cover now, not out of revenge, but resolution. Jupiter still curls beside me while I write. The ocean still murmurs outside my balcony. And when I look out at the horizon, it feels like the world is no longer asking me to shrink. I used to whisper in empty rooms. Now I speak, and the room leans in. Finally.